Hello, Lauren here with Lauren Elizabeth Fine Art, and I help beginner through professional level artists reduce stress while mastering the art of animal art. In today's animal painting tutorial for stress relief, I'm going to be showing you in time-lapse form how I painted this cockapoo named Freddie. And I'm also going to be talking about how you don't need to be an amazing artist to make remarkable pet portraits. And furthermore, you don't even need expensive paint and brushes to get there. So guys, without further ado, let's get painting. Alright, so like I do with all my pet portraits, I start out with my sketch. And how I like to work is I'll create a plus sign in the middle, and that helps me gauge the placement of the dog, the position that it's sitting or laying down. And then I work from large shapes to small. So I work large to small, basically with my pencil, kind of like I do with my brush, where we work on those general shapes and then we go into those really teeny tiny details. And that leads me to my point about you do not need to be an amazing artist with tons of years of experience to make amazing pet portraits. What you do need are three main things. One, the right methods. So you need to know the right steps to help you draw and paint your pet portrait. So following the right techniques really helps you pretty much know the outcome. The last two things may surprise you, but it really is true. You need patience and determination. These pet portraits can take anywhere from, I would say, 5, 8, 10 hours to sometimes 40, 50, 60 plus hours just to complete. And so it just depends on how many layers you're putting on, how much detail you want to add, and also the animal that you're painting. But why it is possible for even beginner artists to create a beautiful pet portrait is because, well, for instance, when it comes to the drawing, you don't need to make a perfect sketch. You don't need to paint or draw in whiskers because we end up painting those at the very end. You don't need to draw in all the fur and every detail in the eye and nose because we end up layering it over top anyway. Even if some of your proportions are wrong, you can easily make little tweaks with your paint. And because the painting process can be pretty time consuming, you don't want to be obsessing and putting too much of your time into the drawing. You want to do the best that you can. Of course, it always helps to have a wonderful sketch, a sketch that is really thorough, but there are a lot of things that you can do with your paint and very efficiently to make little fixes to your drawing. So towards the end of my drawing, I will just make sure everything is in the right spot. Sometimes I will have to rework legs or limbs or ears to get it right. And then after that, I outline it with a color that is close to the dog or maybe something from the background. Usually never black, but definitely a dark tone that helps me to really see the lines that I want to keep from my drawing. And what I'm outlining is just over a plain canvas. I haven't added anything to it. I usually don't gesso my canvas, but oftentimes I will recycle and just cover it with a coat of white or a lighter color tone, just to cover up and make sure it's a solid color. And then I'll get drawing. Sometimes I'll draw with a colored pencil or I'll just draw with my paintbrush. And so that's how I get my sketch down. So after my sketch is outlined, I will go in with my background, and especially when I'm working with a curly-haired dog or a long-haired dog. And guess what? You don't even have to know exactly what background you want. You can try out a few and see if they work. And even after painting a few layers of the dog, you can still alter that background. That's something I've been doing lately. You just don't want to start adding any of the fur yet until you have the right background that you want, because it's just very hard to rematch that color, even though it's possible, and I've done it many times before. It's just a true pain to have to rematch that same color and repaint the whole background. and then go in around all the little curls or fur strands that you have. But leading up to that, you definitely have a lot of opportunities to try all different types of colored backgrounds. Now, once I have the background finished, then I move on to parts of the dog or the foreground. So if I have a dog bowl, I'll paint that. If I have a bow tie, like here, Freddie's wearing this, gonna be a red bow tie, I paint that in. And even if I don't even like the color of what I'm painting here, say I want to make this a blue bow tie, I can layer that over top. That's what's so nice and very flexible about this medium, is that we can just simply fix our mistakes by painting over top of it. Whereas a colored pencil, you really have to work light to dark, and it's kind of tricky to fix your mistakes if you go too dark. But if you go too dark here, you can just simply layer over top to lighten it up, or vice versa. So here I go, adding a different colored background. This, I decided to go with a light blue at the top and then kind of become darker towards the bottom. And that's actually something that the client also liked and wanted, so it worked out really well. And sometimes it'll take me 5 or 6 times to get the background right, and then sometimes right off the bat it looks right and it works. But most importantly, you just want to have that background pretty much completed before you do any of those curls that kind of lead into the background. As far as paint quality goes, it always helps to have a good quality paint. I'm currently using, and I always use, Master's Touch acrylics. I also like Basics acrylics. Those just have the color that I'm looking for. But if you are using a lower quality paint, but you just want to paint a pet portrait, it just simply might mean you need to add more layers. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a poor color than I do. It just might mean I might have to apply 1 or 2 coats. You might have to apply 3 or 4. That's also applies for if you have a cheap canvas. Sometimes those canvases can be like sponges. They just suck up the paint. So it always helps to have good quality materials, but you don't have to. Don't let anything come in the way of you having fun with painting. That should just be a given. And then maybe in the future you can get a little bit more expensive products. Also, you don't have to add in every single detail into the foreground. So let's say you want to paint a bowl or a bow tie like I'm doing. I actually don't need to lay down all the details before doing the dog. I can lay down most of them and then add that in in my final details phase at the end. But for the most part, I'm going to get it all in, all the connected parts, I call it. So the background and the connected parts, I'll paint that and then move on to the dog. Now, starting off is very simple. You just start with black and then you work on the eyes and the nose, and then you just layer from dark to light like I mentioned before. So your darkest tones to your medium tones to your light tones, and then repeat. I call one round dark, medium, light. And so you'll probably have to do many rounds. I literally mean 10, 15, 20 rounds to get it looking realistic. And see what I mean? It's a lot of repeats. It's actually quite simple as long as you follow the right steps. It's just simply intimidating because of how long it can take sometimes. Now, I think the most challenging part can just be knowing what's a dark tone, what's a medium tone, what's a light tone. That is something that I think comes with practice, comes with just looking at a lot of different paint colors, looking at a lot of different reference photos for pets. And then it just becomes so second nature. You know exactly what paint to use where, whenever you pick up a reference photo. And it just seems to kind come with time. So that's something that you don't need to beat yourself up about if you don't necessarily know which colors to choose. Once I lay down most of my dark tones, if not all, I'll move on to my medium tones. So the medium tones are just a little bit lighter than my dark tones, but darker than my lightest tones. If you notice, I'm still not creating curls or main strands of fur. I am a little bit, but really not a whole lot. My main goal in the beginning stages of my pet portrait is just to cover up the white. I'm not really focused on really making sure I get every detail. I do that a little bit when I'm painting my eyes and my nose, but not so much towards the beginning, mostly towards the end. So one definite characteristic of Cockapoos is just these very furry, long, curly fur around the face, and then definitely tighter curls around the body. These dogs are not very large. They're kind of a medium-sized dog, and a lot of that fur just kind of drops around the eye, so we definitely get a lot more darkness around the eyes. And then that nose that kind of pushes out, it's kind of that a large pointy nose, not pointy, but it definitely sticks out pretty far. So I'm going to put a lot of highlights on the top of that nose. So as you can see here, I have almost basically no white, and now I'm starting to go in with my light tones. And here I'm really starting to make those curls. I'm really adding that detail. And it's just layer after layer. Knowing what round you're at is important, and then knowing just you don't want to build up to basically using white, but towards the end when you're doing your highlights, you will likely use a lot more white or yellow or your lighter tone. It's during this phase that I'm really fixing up a lot of my sketch. So maybe I need to raise up that head a little bit more because it was too short. Or maybe I need to make this fluffy, furry hair on the ends of the ears because I didn't create that in the drawing. Or maybe I need to make the left leg a little longer. I'm kind of towards the end of my painting, and so I'm going to add details, but also make sure my proportions are right. Now, an important thing to note about this particular painting is how the background, I include the grass in the background, I didn't finish because it's actually going to lay over top the dog around the legs. So sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you have a background, maybe a lifted up blanket or maybe a chair or toy, and it's a part of the background, but it's also part of the dog. You always want to get the dog completed and all the fur and the detail in that, and then go and do that part, like I'm going to be doing the grass at the end. See how a pet portrait really isn't that complicated? It's simply just repeating the same thing, dark, medium, light, dark, medium, light. That phase of the painting takes the longest, but it's the most important. Every layer counts. There's not one layer that doesn't matter. Once I have basically all my layers down of fur, then I add in those final details on the eyes, on the nose, on the paws, anything on the bow tie. And sometimes that'll take me quite a while too because I'll have to mix up more grays, all different tones of browns to get those tiny details. This phase of the painting, I'm using smaller brushes, so I kind of work from large brush to small. I start with my flat brush, my larger round brushes, and then I kind of move in towards my detail brushes, which are usually round brushes, or my rigger brush, which is really a great brush for doing fur, very thin, long brush. And so it helps, again, it helps to have the right materials, the right products, But honestly, you only need 3. You need a large flat brush, a medium flat brush, and a small detail brush. If you have those 3 brushes, and they don't have to be the highest of quality, you can pretty much paint any pet portrait. One important thing is just adding those little highlights, basically facing the direction of the light source. And usually that's just a light gray or even a white. And then you add those lightest colored fur strands with your detail brush. Now, if you would like to paint this cockapoo in real time, I'll be adding it soon to my online animal art masterclass. And all the links for that are down below. That's for beginners and intermediate and advanced level artists. I walk you through step by step. So if you would like to learn those steps that I was talking about, that's also in my online animal art masterclass. I'm creating a new series called Dog Portrait Fundamentals. So not only can you choose from a variety of different breed dog tutorials, but I'll also be adding my 12-step process in how to paint any dog. If you would like a shorter, summarized version of this 12-step process, I have a downloadable sheet down below for you. And guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day.